And welcome to this week's news round. We've got an awful lot to talk about today. Welcome to my co-host, Kayla Leisure from Leisurely Literature.
Leisurely Literature.
Leisurely Literature. I still have some hang-ups about that, as you're clearly well aware. So my apologies. And what we're going to be talking about today is going to cover some of those literacy issues and so forth. So let's get straight into it. I shall share my screen and we'll have a little bit of a chat about some of the current issues in education.
Hey, let's go.
Picked this up in The Guardian this week, and it's about US education. I'm a little bit nervous about this because it's not necessarily my area of expertise. But it's talking about their results being sobering. Their high school seniors' reading and math scores plummeting, falling, and talking about the reasons behind it. And it's interesting. It pinpoints absenteeism and smartphones and things like that. As someone that works in the field, do you see reading and math scores, well, reading particularly in your area, do you see that as a growing problem? Is that something that's falling away? A bigger
100%. And I think it's not just. I mean, we've seen recently and talked quite recently about a lot of the big data coming up worldwide, and especially in the Western and Anglophone countries. There seems to be a growing issue, and this is not something that is new. This has been a trending decline over a number of years. Pre-pandemic, but it seems to be that the pandemic has and is still having an impact. Of course it has. Of course it will. But this is something that definitely I think teachers were shouting about in the US, having worked at an American school, were shouting out about in the US 6-7 years ago, that they were noticing there were problems. They were trying to flag issues, and it's finally the big data is coming out that actually we're seeing an issue. We're seeing an issue with reading in the UK, also with mathematics in the UK, and we're seeing similar issues when we compare to the world through like PISA data and whatnot. We're seeing some things coming home to roost.
It's interesting. There is a corresponding article in the Times Ed this week about math scores, particularly in the UK. And how they're struggling with that. What are the reasons for this? Are we just, as an industry, as a profession, are we falling short? Are we failing? Is there something systemic? What are the reasons behind it, do you think?
This is really interesting, and I would love to be an educational statistician, is the right word, where you can look at the big data. Because I, as one person in a classroom who talks to a huge number of people, in multiple countries, I can see that there are multiple issues. And I think, things that they've highlighted in here are absenteeism, which we talked about our last podcast, but that actually links to mental health, which links to, the way that we're collecting this data and how our curriculum is formed. It links to well-being, it links to connection. And so I don't think there is a, one reason why this is happening, but I think it is a collection of issues that we're starting to really see.
Well, let's hone in on the absenteeism for a second, because that's one that interests me. It's quite a topical debate in the UK. Parents get fined. That fine is increasing, and so on and so forth. So quite controversially in some courts as well. If we have that absenteeism, part of that at least could be down to the fact that you don't technically need to attend school now to access your material. Most of it is available on a VLE in the old speak, different portals that schools have now, and so on and so forth, and platforms and various items like that, where you can access your content and your material. So where is the benefit of going into school, and how do we sell that to pupils and indeed parents? Because it's usually the parents that make the call, not the pupils.
It can be. I think, I think that there's a huge amount of information out there. We have more educational content on the internet than we have ever had before. Take out anything else. You can access through loads of free kind of things, any kind of teaching that you would like. You can revise things, you can put things up, not just what your teacher is presenting. And yet we are seeing that this is not making a huge difference in terms of overall achievement. And I think that's because we know that one of the main reasons why we go to school and we do well in certain subjects is the connection that we have with the person who's teaching it. I think to my education.
I love that word, and I hear it when I speak to wherever I go, whoever I speak to, whichever country it's in. That concept of connection is a consistent, and I really do value that. And I find this quite fascinating because for years, and we're still doing this, we've been shoveling content at kids in classrooms, and that we've been guardians of knowledge, and we've imparted that in the classroom. We've known what books, what articles, things to read. We've drawn stuff on the board. We've given that knowledge to kids. They don't need us to do that now as teachers. The content is out there. It's public domain. It's impossible to kind of be that guardian anymore. And I wonder if we're maybe missing an opportunity here in schools, in that we're maybe still trying to shovel content at kids, and perhaps there's a bit more room for that magic thing, that connection between teacher and student, if we were just to rein back a little bit on the content that we try and deliver.
I think so. And I think, I went to a training, must have been about 10 years ago, talking about like the flipped classroom, where students go off and find, for their homework, they're not just gap filling and reviewing the stuff that you have presented dutifully on the board because that is your job. No. Like, your job is to then go off and find and use ChatGPT, to use whatever you like, but to come back and to share. And that is like, the classroom is that sacred space for students to come back. And that's where we really fact check. And that's where we really check that the information is really true and good. And we share that knowledge and we connect with the other people around us. And I think that's key. And I think we are it seems to be, we are losing the battle here. It is a bit uphill in terms of getting that in classrooms.
I wonder if we change the system whereby we sought to impart skills rather than knowledge, whether we be able to move and solve some of these problems. The need to come into school to access knowledge is largely gone. But you can't acquire those skills without actually coming in and having that magic space, that connection. So that's interesting. Let's talk about the smartphones thing. And this is something that's of personal interest to me. The battle is going on in my house with my daughter, particularly, who's just gone to senior school. Where do we start with smartphones? How much access should they have? How old should they be when you give them and pay for a smartphone? All of those kind of things.
I mean, this is an absolute minefield. And as a I'm not a parent, I'm an educator. So my opinion is ever so slightly different, I think, because I'm not having that pressure from the ground up.
Probably more objective as a result, I would suspect.
I think they're incredible tools. They're amazing tools, and they are evolving faster than I can imagine. The things that my students show me that they can do on their smartphone is incredible. When I think back to my Nokia brick that my mum held out, and I wasn't allowed one until I was 15, and in the end my friend gave me one for my birthday because mum was like, no, she's not having one. So I am of that generation where I was like, I can play Snake. This is very exciting. And I do see the flip side. I do see my students come in and the phone gets put on the desk and it's there, it's watching, the notification comes, and even though sometimes I'm one-to-one with a student and we're having a wonderful conversation, connection, we're learning things, we're doing our grammar, and the notification comes and there's just that attention lost because it's there. I know it's there and I want to check it. And in the end, if there is no policy, because it's there, because the student has seen it, actually to get their attention back, it is easier for me to say, just check, that's not important. Because otherwise they're worried. They're worried that they've had a notification and should I be checking it? It's much easier in a classroom to take them away. and to put them in a box. And that's what I used to do. And because that was the school policy, it worked really well because the students knew. And they knew that I would do it. Every lesson without fail, they would come in, the phones would go in the box would go at the front. And if it rang, if it went off, if it did anything, they couldn't touch it, they couldn't do anything. But other teachers didn't. And that caused a huge rift then within our educational community.
And do you think that loss of attention, that loss of train of thought, has an impact on academic outcomes for pupils?
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's that momentary loss. It's that switch. I notice it when I wear my Apple Watch and I'm teaching and I get something through. It's impossible to ignore because I'm like, oh, it's fine. But I've lost my train of thought. The next thing that I'd stacked up in my brain that was going to be my next sentence, gone. And I think it's those little bits every day. It's those micro moments. Yeah.
I suppose like a sort of wearable version of ADHD, perhaps. It draws your attention away.
I don't need any help with that. To be honest, got it inbuilt. So you add it on top, and we're in a real pickle.
I did wonder about this, and when I lived and worked in China, we had to take the smartphones off the children in the boarding house before they went to bed. Clearly, and they had fake phones, which I didn't know were a thing, but they are. And that highlighted that sort of addictive nature of smartphones to me, and I did wonder whether it was something that maybe you could just self-regulate with and manage.
I think we're realizing that adults are not able to self-regulate. We are addicted to the dopamine hit that we get from our smartphones. We the data is out there, the research has been done, and you give that to a child whose prefrontal cortex and all these other things are not developed. There is very little impulse control to start with, and you start putting a very addictive, very incredible tool into a student's hand. I don't think you can do it. I think you need to teach them how to use it, and I think that is a one-to-one parent-to-child job. That is not a classroom 30 kids for a teacher job.
Stuff. So you would largely speaking agree with the sentiment expressed in this article that smartphones are part of the problem rather than part of the solution as things stand.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, interesting. I shall relay that on to my daughter as part of our ongoing discussions and negotiations.
She'll hate me, but it's fine.
How old should you be before you get a smartphone?
It's a good question. I think it depends on the child. I think there are, isn't it, no screens before, what is it? It's the 555, isn't it? Or 333. No screens before 5, no social media before 15. There's a thing. Wish I knew what that was. Yeah, I think it's the UN. I think it's the United Nations thing. I can probably check that for us right now using my smartphone.
I need some authority to take back to my daughter, but thank you. Okay, well let's follow on that theme, because we've got a lot going on with mobile phones and so forth, and we've got Sweden here. This is an article in the Guardian again. Sweden to implement nationwide mobile phone ban in schools. What's your? I think we can probably guess, but what is your take on this?
I think it's excellent. I think it's so clear. It's so clear, so beautiful. There's none of that grey space. There's no one teacher does it, one teacher doesn't, which makes it really hard. You go to school, you put your phone in your locker or in your box, or you hand it to somebody, or you charge it, whatever. Parents then know they can't contact their kids through their smartphone. Students are safer because they're not messaging and videoing, and nothing can be, no pictures of them can be taken in the classroom. They don't have to respond to certain things at a certain time, otherwise that's it. They're not part of that joke anymore. I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm all for it. I don't know how you feel, Chris.
Yeah, I think of this from I think in principle it's a great idea. I love it. The simplicity and the absolute nature of it is great. Practically, from a school's perspective, how do I implement that? How do I manage that? And I hark back to my time in the boarding house trying to manage the fake phones, the all of that kind of stuff. And it was the bane of my life. It was the worst part of my job at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I wonder how you actually manage that. How do you get past the idea that kids can have them in their pockets and you'll never know about it? They can check things when they go to the bathroom. How do you actually get past the policing of it? And parents will be complicit in that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think you have to get parents on board, and I think which is also key. I think that is something that we spoke about before, that we feel like is we're losing that connection with families again. We have to get parents on board. They have to understand why, and we have to have a system where, you know, the teachers almost are removed. This could be a monitor job as they come in first thing in the morning. They go in the box, we check that it's on, we check that it's their phone, it has, you know, their code or their serial number or whatever it might be, and then it's done for the day. I'm just looking at, okay, so I can't find the, you know, no screens before 3, but Jonathan, I don't hate height, who did a big expose on social media and the anxious generation, said that there should be no smartphones at all before the age of 14. And that kind of makes sense to me. And then you need to be taught how to use your smartphone with your parent. Because 13, 14, 15 is a real sensitive age in terms of socialization with your friends. That's who you want to connect with. And so it makes sense to me that might be the time when you really want that, but also you are a bit more mature and you have that relationship with a parent where you can figure it out.
So I've got another 3 years of negotiation to go yet. Excellent.
I think you can just say no. Yeah.
Okay, so I think probably we're in agreement around the ban on phones. I think it's a good idea. Policing it, I think, practically is quite tricky. It's something that's going on in lots of different countries around the world, which I think is a great step forward in terms of recognizing both the harm as well as the good that those things can do. So you talked about the connection between parents and school, and that ties in very neatly with our next article, which you put this one in, and it's about 6 families a week turning to home education. That group of people taking their children out of mainstream school in the UK and taking them into a homeschool environment, which is no mean commitment. That's a big commitment to make as a parent.
It is.
I wondered if you had any thoughts on maybe why that's happening and what the challenges are that make people make that jump.
So this article is a really nice short one, but I think it highlights again another side of things, you know, really not going very well. So they're saying that this is specifically in Northamptonshire this article is based on, but I think we can extrapolate the data to quite a bit of the UK. And they're saying that the number of children taken out of school and homeschooled has doubled in the last 4 years. I mean, that's big, and a lot of the article kind of centers around the different reasons for it. Some are for philosophical or religious reasons, but most because they're not satisfied with schools, because of mental health reasons, and because of well-being reasons. And a lot of these kind of came up because of students with SEND or other needs that they feel are just not being met in school.
Touching on that point, do you think that the teachers are just not doing what they should be doing? Do you think they're failing in some shape or form, or do you think it's something a touch more systemic? The teachers, because most of the teachers I know want to do the best for every child that's in front of them for the most part.
Yeah, no, I think teachers are doing above and beyond what they can. We know this because we know that the teacher rate of burnout is so high right now. We know that we have huge dissatisfaction amongst head teachers and teachers in terms of knowing that they are doing the best that they can do, but the support in the systems around school are not there. because they've been systematically removed. So there is no, the access to child and adolescent mental health at CAMHS as it used to be, it is wildly lacking. We just don't have enough spaces. We don't have enough specialist teachers to be able to go in and help with a lot of these things. We're seeing more and more difficult behavior coming from difficult, complex issues in the classroom, and teachers are doing the absolute best that they can, and I'm certain of that. But at the moment, we've got a really big issue where the supporting systems around the school are just not there. I think the government recognise it. I think a lot of what we're seeing in their social media output is how they're trying to put more money and more expertise in place. It's just going to take time, and for a lot of families, your child's growing every day. You just don't have that time.
It's an interesting resource choice very often when it comes down to it, I guess. If you made class sizes markedly smaller, would you be able to address much of this? Well, it would free up a bit of teacher bandwidth within that and allow them to manage that on a very low key basis and integrate students in a better format. But that's a resource choice. That's money. And that's tricky.
So that's something that has come up here. I've taught in non-state schools and state schools in different countries. And often when we have parents who put their children into a private school who are from that country, so they're not looking necessarily because it is like a mother tongue language. A lot of the reasons are because of a smaller class size. And because then you get better access to the teacher. If you're a 16-to-1 class versus a 32-to-1 class, your child is going to get double the amount of connecting time with that teacher. Chris, I do have a question to ask, because I know that you've made some decisions about not necessarily homeschooling, but pulling back from the state system. Why? Tell me more. Does this ring home for you?
For sure. We looked at the state sector and we made a choice to put both our children into private schools here in the Northeast. It was no small decision.
No.
And financially, it had massive implications for us as a family. But it was really focused on happiness, well-being, and a big part of that was class size. That bandwidth that the teacher has to sit down and have a chat to your son or daughter at a particular point in time. There's also a little bit around the opportunities that come with it, that come with that bandwidth, and so on. But it was kind of, I suppose, just wanting them to be comfortable and happy with their journey. It was not, funnily enough, about grades at all, ever. There was never an issue around grades. It was all about the children being engaged and so on, and comfortable and happy. And so far, we're very happy with the decision. I have days where I think about the cost involved, and it does occasionally trouble me. But then I think about bigger picture stuff, and actually, a big part of it does come down to that class size thing. And a big part of it comes down to the sort of safety and security that our children feel where they are, that they wouldn't necessarily get in some of the places that are local to us. If we lived elsewhere, it might be a different choice. But we don't, and that's the decision that we made. And it's not been an easy choice socially either. Some people do judge. What's wrong with the state school, or politically maybe you're a little bit up yourself. And there are even people that have stopped talking to us because it's a choice that we've made. Now, we don't judge others for the choices they make.
No. And I think that's something that I would love to end this this little segment on, is that this is not, we're not holding this as a judgment, both of us being teachers. homeschooling, a judgment. We know that it's on the rise in the UK. We know that it's been on the rise in the US for a number of years.
Yeah.
We're also, starting kind of ending with, there are some issues across these two schooling systems. And one of the, core, we like to call it a crux maggot in our household. The maggot at the begin, in the middle, the crux, the maggot. One of these little crux maggots.
What a grotesque phrase.
I know, but it fits. I'm quite a visual thinker.
Yeah.
And I can imagine this little maggot in the middle of the problem, the little crux worm, little crux maggot, being well-being. Parents want what is best for their kids, and for some children that is being homeschooled because they get the connection to that caregiver. For some students that is going to a school where the class size is smaller. I think really does
I think tying that all together is sort of reiterating what you said. I think the problems are probably systemic rather than sort of related to any particular teacher or teaching practice, things like that. Because the number of teachers that I speak to that within the state sector particularly, who say that they feel that they can't give the input and the care and time that they would like to the students in front of them. They constantly pushed for time. There's probably solutions that need to be thought about there. Some of that will be resourced, some of that will be prioritizing what's important and what's not. Maybe stripping some of that stuff out. And I think within that, there's probably a real drive for all time to be accountable time in schools. And I think that's a profound mistake. We have an accountability model from Ofsted ISI, and that's reflected in some of the international inspection models. And we drive towards making sure that every moment can be accounted for. And actually, trust, integrity, warmth, openness, they're not built in those structured times. They're built in those unstructured times. And I think that there really needs to be a step forward in schools to make sure that there is some of that empty time for teachers to trust your teachers to do that intangible work with kids.
For sure.
I think I'm conscious of time. We'll probably stop at that, I think, this week. And
that's a good
real
pausing
pleasure
point.
to you again, Kaylee. Some controversial stuff in there. All good.
As always.
Well,
no, thank you. It's been fun. And we'll see everyone in a couple of weeks for the next one.
Excellent. Thanks, folks. Bye now.
Bye.